You ever walk away from a conversation and just feel like you and the other person were speaking completely different languages? Well, today, we're going to dive into why that happens so often. We're going to reframe our whole idea of listening, not as some technique you have to master, but as a mindset, a way of being. Let's get into it.
So, I want you to ask yourself a question, and be really honest here. When someone is talking to you, are you truly listening to what they have to say? Or are you just, waiting for that little pause, that tiny gap in the conversation where you can jump in?
For most of us, if we're being honest, it's the second one. It's like we treat conversations like we're stuck in traffic, just impatiently waiting for a tiny opening so we can merge our own ideas onto the highway. We're not really listening to understand them, we're listening to interrupt, to correct, or to subtly steer the whole thing back to our favorite topic, ourselves.
And this habit is so common, it actually has a name. It's called listening to speak. It's our default mode, really, and it's driven almost entirely by our own ego. It's more of a performance than a real connection.
So, what does this ego-driven listening look like? Well, there are a few dead giveaways. You're busy crafting your brilliant reply while the other person is still mid-sentence. You're basically hunting for the little flaw in their logic so you can pounce on it and fix it. And you cannot stand silence, right? Because every quiet moment just feels like wasted airtime. It all boils down to one thing. The focus is completely on us.
Okay, so for decades, the proposed fix for this very human problem has been to learn a specific set of skills, a kind of playbook for better communication called active listening.
And the idea, which actually comes from the psychologist Carl Rogers, is pretty straightforward. It's a structured way to show someone you're actually paying attention by giving them feedback, confirming that you've understood them. The whole point was to create this environment of empathy and real support.
And this playbook has all the classic moves you've probably heard of, maybe even been taught in a workshop. Things like paraphrasing what someone just said, reflecting their feelings back to them, asking good, clarifying questions, and summarizing their main points. These are the standard tools we're given to become better communicators.
And let's be real, for a long time, the main selling point of active listening was influence. The theory was pretty simple. If you can make someone feel truly heard, you can persuade them more easily. But what if that core assumption, the whole reason we're taught to do this, is just plain wrong? Okay, this is where our whole understanding of listening takes a really fascinating and totally unexpected turn. It turns out there's something researchers are calling the persuasion paradox. So get this. In a major study from Yale, researchers found that when political canvassers went out and used all the standard, by-the-book active listening techniques, it did not make them any more persuasive. At all. People definitely felt heard, sure, but they didn't change their minds. And right there, that's the paradox in a nutshell. We've been treating active listening as this secret weapon for persuasion, but it turns out its real power is something else entirely. It's connection. The tool works, it just doesn't work for the reason we thought it did. This brings us to a massive question. If this whole playbook of skills isn't actually about winning an argument or changing someone's mind, then what is the real purpose of listening so deeply to another person? Well, the answer means we have to completely reframe the entire act of listening. It's not a strategy for winning. It's a practice of humility. It's about having the courage to just hear someone. So here's the new definition. True active listening is an act of humility. It's the simple admission that you don't have all the answers. And this is the important part, it's being willing to take the risk of being changed by what you hear. This goes right back to what Carl Rogers was saying all along. To truly listen is to open yourself up to being transformed. I love this metaphor from the Harvard Business Review. Are you a sponge listener or a trampoline listener? A sponge just passively soaks up information. But a great listener, they're like a trampoline. They don't just absorb. They give the speaker's ideas energy, height, and amplification. They actually help the speaker explore their own thoughts more deeply. And when you start listening like a trampoline, the entire goal of the conversation just shifts. You're no longer trying to win a debate. You're trying to build a bridge between two people. The real prize isn't being right. It's creating a moment of genuine human connection. So how do we actually do this? How do we move from listening to win to listening to connect? Let's break it down into some real, practical steps. All right, how do we practice this? First, and this is the hardest one for so many of us, you have to put your advice away. Your job is to witness their experience, not to fix it. Second, learn to embrace the silence. A pause doesn't mean you've lost control, it means you're actually thinking. Third, listen with your eyes.
So much of what people are really saying is in their body language, not just their words. And finally, be a mirror. Gently reflect their meaning back to them, not to prove you were paying attention, but to truly show them that they are seen.
So let's end on this thought. True listening isn't a technique you check off a list. It's a practice you commit to over and over again. It's that lifelong, humble effort to quiet your own ego just long enough to truly hear someone else. In a world that is getting louder every single day, choosing to listen isn't just a communication skill, it's an act of profound generosity. So the next time you're in a conversation, ask yourself, am I just waiting for my turn, or am I offering the gift of being heard?